There were no lights, no cameras, no melodramatic TLC confessionals, just the stifling quiet of a Flagstaff courtroom where the air was palpably holding its breath. The chairs were cold, the walls were bare, and the only sound was the soft clicking of a clerk feeding paper after paper into neatly piled stacks. Christine was seated at the table of the plaintiff, fingers clasped around a little brown leather binder, not the infamous blue binder of today, but something more personal. It was thinner, older, and looked to have lived its years in a drawer for much too long. Cody sat opposite her, arms crossed, lips pursed, clad in a black jacket that felt like armor more than a suit. His eyes didn't flinch, trained on the front bench like a prisoner waiting for a sentence he was determined not to receive. Behind him, Robyn was muttering something so quietly it was inaudible, her face pale and impassive. Meri rested against the wood panel in the back of the room, a universe away from the woman who had once wrapped herself in hope like a shroud, and Janelle sat stiff and motionless, fingers flailing at her waist as if to keep herself from springing up to scream. The judge walked in with the same deliberate control he'd had for the first 5 days of testimony. But today, something was wrong. Something was different. He didn't take a seat right away. He cleared his throat and pushed his glasses higher and then waved a piece of paper above him like a decree. Prior to commencing today's hearing of 2019 accounts, this court has just been presented with a verified affidavit and accompanying documentation about an undisclosed account newly opened in the name of K. Dalton Trust. For the briefest fraction of a second, time was suspended. No one stirred. And then Cody blinked, slowly, hard, and caught. The judge lowered the paper slowly. Situation and account. Most recent review of transaction is $2,134,000. It was there, the figure, the bomb. And it exploded harder than anything Christine had ever practiced. Her eyes never flinched, but her heart did. Janelle moved forward, almost instinctively, Robyn paralyzed. Cody didn't move. Not a muscle, but his silence wasn't bravery. It was panic, honed. This transaction, the judge continued, was not revealed in any prior financial disclosures, nor was it mentioned during the 2020 marital asset disclosure. The court is asking. Christine remained silent. She didn't need to. The room was speaking for her now. The hushed rum of discomfort that threaded its way through the benches, the suppressed gasp Meri couldn't quite stifle, the way Robyn clutched at her purse as though it could somehow shield her from the fact barreling headlong their way. Christine sat rigid as a board, back straight as an arrow, eyes locked on the judge like a guard on duty. This was not shock. She'd heard of something similar. What she'd not heard was that the court would find out first. Twice Cody blinked, his jaw cracking, his hands slowly unfisting, just long enough to toy with the buttons of his cuff, as if the burden of the gavel hadn't just rested upon his shoulders. "Mr. Brown," he said slowly, his deep voice heavy with suppressed irritation. "Can you confirm the existence of this account and your connection to the K. Dalton Trust?" Cody's jaw widened in outrage, but the first noise was a stutter. Not words, just a soft whisper of air that spoke of the storm seething beneath his tightly built facade. "It was a business contingency," he said finally, every syllable taut like a shovel through pebbles, "not intended for the family's immediate use." The judge's brow creased, skeptical but patient. And yet, family funds were deposited into this account dating back as far as 2017, including diverted TLC payments and payments labeled as joint LLCs. That was the knife, the kind that cut not with surprise, but with verification. Christine's breath had stalled in her throat, not with rage, but with relief, because now, finally, someone else was saying out loud what she had suspected late into the darkest nights of her marriage, that Cody had lied, not merely lied, but siphoned, diverted, and buried. Janelle's mouth opened, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find breath. Meri stood upright now, no longer leaning forward, her expression a mix of disbelief and vindication. Robyn turned slowly to Cody, eyes wide, not with confusion but fear. The kind that only comes out when the lie isn't hidden, it is evidence. "Mrs. Brown," the judge continued, now turning to Christine, "do you have facts to back up your claim that marital income was illegally withheld or diverted into this account?" Christine did not flinch. She pawed through the folio and pulled out one sheet, one page, one date, one transaction. "Yes, Your Honor," she answered, her voice calm and deliberate. and that is only the beginning. The judge waved to the clerk to remove the document from Christine. She didn't flinch, not for one breath, as she relinquished it. The paper moved smoothly like a sword through the courtroom, not in size or weight, but in what it represented, a crack in the dam built by Cody over the years that was beginning to slowly crack under judicial scrutiny. The clerk delivered it to the judge, who read it once and then again, and a glimmer of frustration flickered over his face. "This is a direct deposit receipt," he read aloud, "for $124,000, paid by Brown Media Holdings, a business jointly registered by Mr. and Mrs. Brown in 2016. The account listed as Payee K. Dalton Trust." The silence in the room was no longer silent. It was dense, laden, charged. Christine didn't flinch. Cody could have. Janelle leaned forward toward the bench, stunned. And Robyn. Robyn leaned back, her mouth hanging open as if in anticipation of gauging how long it would be before her name appeared in a ledger. Meri crossed her arms, scowling a hole into the table in front of her. "Mr. Brown," the judge admonished for the second time, his voice more firm this time, "this transaction took place before your divorce proceedings. Why wasn't this account included in your asset disclosure?" Cody forward leaned suddenly, face flushed, words confused. "It was an emergency fund, a last resort in case TLC terminated the contract. It wasn't personal, it wasn't about me." But Christine turned back around, and her voice cut the air like glass. "Then why didn't you tell any of us?" She wasn't angry, she wasn't even yelling. She was worse, calm, controlled, ready. If it was just a business contingency, why did they fund it from a joint account money? Why did they keep it under a mystery name? The judge raised his hand before Cody could answer. "Let the record reflect," he stated, "that Mr. Brown admits the account does exist, that it was seeded with joint income, and that it wasn't uncovered in asset division hearings." And thus the courtroom changed, not with commotion or chaos, but with seriousness. Since now Cody's secrets were no longer rumors passed behind closed doors or intuitions concealed behind Robyn's crying distractions, they were court, documented realities, uttered in the hearing of the very women he'd tried to outwit. Christine unwound slowly, her fingers unclasping their grip on the folio. That page had been but the initial one. There had been 14 more, each dated by year, each stamped, each waiting. Because if $124,000 was the starting pistol, how would the judge respond when he reached 2020? The judge set the first paper to one side and looked at Christine with a look of something like respect and resolve. Not admiration, but recognition. The sort one offers one who has been undervalued for far too long. "How many other transactions have you uncovered?" he inquired, already bracing himself for the answer. Christine's hand reached out again into her folio, slow, measured, and nearly reverent. 14, Your Honor. One for each year Cody dipped funds from the joint account into the K. Dalton Trust, starting in 2009. Robyn took a sharp breath. It was the first sound she'd uttered in almost 10 minutes, and it was not one of surprise. It was recognition. Cody's brow furrowed, his leg twitched beneath the table like a beat of regret. "This account was open prior to any of this," he growled under his breath, audibly enough to be heard in the courtroom, but quietly enough to sound unconvincing. "Prior to anyone being concerned about how money moved." The judge's forehead furrowed. "Mr. Brown, are you suggesting you predicted financial litigation a decade in advance?" Cody's eyes blinked, lips opening involuntarily. I was protecting what we made." Christine didn't even give the judge time. She slid a second page across. "No," she said, "you were protecting what you took." The clerk slid the new paper onto the bench, and again the judge read it in silence. "This withdrawal," he spoke slowly, "is the 21st of December, 2013, withdrawal of $82,000 from the joint holiday budget account. Recipient K. Dalton Trust." And that is when Janelle got up, not angry, not even shocked, but because she remembered that year, the year Cody told them they could not afford to give each child individual gifts, that they'd have to settle for do-it-yourself presents, simple. She had sold her mom's necklace the previous year to afford a used computer for Gabriel. "We didn't have enough for stockings that year," Janelle said, her voice shaking but unmistakable. "He said we were broke." Christine looked over, eyes wet but not broken. "We weren't broke, we were being drained." Robyn stared down at her lap, her hands wrapped tightly around the same leather purse as if it might somehow protect her from everything that was about to come crashing down. The judge didn't cut her off. He simply nodded slowly and placed the second document alongside the first. 2 pages, undefined at 2 timestamps. Undefined, and a story that was only just beginning to come apart at the seams. Undefined, submit all other documents to the clerk, he told her, voice hard. This court is initiating a forensic review of all transfers linked to K. Undefinedilton Trust from 2009 to present day. Undefined, if what you're suggesting is true, Mrs. Brown. This is no longer just a civil proceeding. Undefined, this borders on marital fraud. Christine nodded once. Firmly, as if she had been waiting 40 years to hear someone finally say what it was. Not a misunderstanding, not a miscommunication, but fraud, and not whispered in bedroom corners or church vestibules, but by a judge into a public record with witnesses and court reporters as audience. She handed the remainder of the stack to the clerk, each page in its own clear sleeve, numbered and labeled like a timeline of betrayal. The courtroom did not stir. No one breathed, because everyone knew the moment that binder left Christine's hands, the legend of Kody Brown's control would be finished. The judge flipped through the tabs briefly, his lips pursed into a thin line, eyes tightening at dates, amounts, and routing numbers. The sum total of these transactions, he finally said, voice low but controlled, is just over $2 million. All to an account in your name, Mr. Brown. And none of this was disclosed in previous settlements. Cody wriggled in his seat, jaw clenched, hands now tightly fisted, so that the veins stood out like ridges. You don't understand what it was like trying to manage 4 households. He suddenly exploded, his voice rising. There was never enough. I was trying to hold it all together. The judge raised a hand. You held them up by taking millions away from your wives. Cody's mouth opened again, but Robyn's hand shot out and grasped his arm. Not gently, not kindly, but firmly. Her fingernails scraped across his coat sleeve like a threat. Be quiet before you make it any worse. But it was already too late. Janelle sat down again, slowly reeling from the realization that not only had the money gone, it had never even been intended for her family. Christine folded her hands together in front of her. He told us we were in debt every single year, that we had to cut back. Cancel holidays, put off operations. Her voice cracked. Just slightly. Isabel's scoliosis surgery was delayed for 18 months because we were restructuring finances. That money was there the whole time. He just did not want to spend it on her. The room crystallized into ice. Even the judge's pen stopped, because this was no longer about budgets. This was about damage, about lies that had repercussions outside of the bank account. Mrs. Brown, the judge said warily, are you prepared to testify under oath that your daughter's medical care was postponed due to financial fraud? Christine nodded slowly. Yes, and I have the medical emails to prove it. Cody swore softly under his breath. Robyn leaned forward, eyes wide, now with something worse than panic, recognition. This wasn't damage control anymore. This was reckoning, and it had Christine's voice written all over it. The judge tapped his pen once, a sound that revived the room. Court will take a 10-minute recess, he said, but no one stood. Not at first. Everyone just sat there, stunned, frozen, replaying mentally every lie Cody had ever told in the name of keeping his family safe. And with a single folder and a muted tone, Christine had revealed a truth they could not ignore. When the judge cleared the bench, silence gave way to whispers, hushed and amazed. Christine did not move. She sat still, hands folded, head down, the weight of her own vindication heavier than triumph. Janelle leaned forward again, her voice little more than a whisper. He told me we'd lost a house to foreclosure in 2018, that there was no money to save it. Christine didn't look up. That's the same month he wired $183,000 to the K. Dalton Trust. Janelle closed her eyes. I sold my car that year, just to cover groceries. In the row behind them, Robyn finally stood and stepped into the aisle, her hand still clutching that cursed purse. But instead of leaving, she turned, and for the first time confronted Christine's starehead. I didn't know, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. He told me the trust was for taxes, for protection. Christine lifted her head, but not to her, through her. And when he used my name to open the business account that paid for it, did you think that was for protection too? Robyn said nothing. She just stood, blinking furiously, her hand shaking at her side, because when lies are stripped away little by little, they give you time to deny. But when they're exposed in a single blow, documented, dated, signed, there is no longer anywhere to hide. Meri approached slowly from the back, arms wrapped tightly across her chest. "He had me co-sign a loan in 2015, she said softly. Said it was to pay off Coyote Pass taxes. Now I'm wondering if that money went there too." Christine didn't respond. She didn't need to, because one by one they were starting to see the same thing, that it had never been about saving the family. It had been about saving himself. The clerk returned after 8 minutes. "We'll resume in 2, she said quietly. Christine closed the folio. The pages were already in the judge's hands. The evidence was already on record, and Cody was sitting on a foundation that was crumbling to dust beneath him. He glanced at Robyn, whispered something brief and bitter. She didn't respond. She just stared at the ground as though trying to remember when exactly the truth got too heavy to ignore. When the judge came back into the courtroom, something was different. Not just the tension, that same pot had been simmering since Christine's first binder landed on the desk. No, something else was different. The mood had changed from skepticism to acceptance, from distrust to clarity. The court reporter adjusted her headset. The bailiff shut the door, and the judge, now upright, folded his hands. "This hearing," he began, "has officially moved beyond the area of marital settlement review. The court is entertaining potential hiding of assets, theft of joint funds, and breach of full disclosure statutes under family law." The words dropped like a hammer, not from shock, but because for the first time, Kody Brown's economic empire wasn't just being questioned by the women he'd controlled for years. It was being dismantled by the very justice system he thought he was smart enough to outwit. Cody did not move. His eyes did not blink. His arms crossed again like a child bracing for punishment, he adamant he did not deserve, but Robyn blinked. She pulled her hand from his arm, as though it had been scorched. Meri remained standing at the side, as though to sit would be surrender. And Christine stood taller than she had all day, because this wasn't the moment she dreamed of. It was the one she earned. The judge cleared his throat again. "To make it a matter of record, this court has reviewed 15 transactions, affidavit, confirmed cross, reference with the Brown family's cumulative TLC earnings, LLC distributions, and documented mortgage withdrawals. All trace back to one fund, the K. Dalton Trust. None were disclosed." The gavel didn't fall, but the weight of those words struck just the same. "We will begin with the largest transaction, a transfer of $374,000 on the 6th of June 2020, sourced from the liquidation of a Las Vegas property originally purchased with pooled family income." Christine slid another paper toward her attorney. "That house was in Janelle's name," she said quietly. "We sold it to help cover the down payment on Robyn's new Flagstaff house." Janelle inhaled sharply. "He told me we were finally investing in a single home we could all share." The judge brought up the wire transfer. "Instead, this was put into the Dalton Trust. Same day, same hour." Cody finally leaned forward, his voice low but burning with intensity. "You think I stole from them? I carried them. I put food in 18 mouths while they nitpicked over furniture receipts." Christine responded without turning her head. "You didn't carry us, you buried us? Then told us we were lucky to be covered in dirt." The courtroom did not gasp. It did not need to, because the truth no longer needed volume, it had documentation. The judge did not blink. He simply lowered the wire transfer printout and placed it softly on the bench like a blade being returned to a scabbard. "Let the record show," he said, voice sharp as glass, "that Mr. Brown's statements do not dispute the transactions in question, only the interpretation." Christine's attorney stood now, calm and confident. "Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to enter Exhibit F into evidence. It is a printed email conversation between Mr. Brown and his financial planner, dated July 2020, 1 month after the Las Vegas transfer, where he actually refers to the Dalton Trust as his secure fallback in the event any of the wives go rogue. That term alone, go rogue, sucked the air out of the room. Janelle slowly turned her head to face Cody, stunned. Robyn closed her eyes. Christine didn't bat an eye. Her hands weren't trembling. Her breathing wasn't irregular. She'd read those emails 5 times over before she ever let her lawyer print them. "Mrs. Brown," the judge said, "how did you come to possess this correspondence?" Christine tilted her head toward the desk. "It was in our family Dropbox until August 2021. I downloaded it before he changed the password." Cody's mouth opened, but nothing came out. No denial, no protest, not even outrage. Silence. Because he had assumed she wouldn't notice. Or worse, that even if she did, she wouldn't have the guts to say it aloud. "The same email chain," Christine continued, "also has a message to Robyn, asking her to be co-signer for a Flagstaff home refinance. It names the Dalton Trust as the final recipient." The judge turned the page. "Indeed, it is here." Robyn shifted in her seat. Her voice was gentle. "He said it was for taxes. He always said everything was for taxes." Christine turned to her then, not in malice, not even in revenge, just in clarity. "You always trusted him. That was the problem, we all did. Until we couldn't anymore. Because this wasn't about trust, not really. It was how Cody weaponized loyalty, how he made silence a currency and belief a liability. And now, in the space where truth could no longer be traded, his empire was bleeding through the very agreements he signed in secret." The judge looked at Cody one last time. "We will reconvene tomorrow with witness testimony. The court demands a full subpoena of the Dalton Trust bank accounts, all of the subsidiary LLCs, and any joint holdings still in Mr. Brown's name." And with that, the session ended. Not with a bang, but with a quiet unraveling. Cody didn't stand. Robyn did, but she didn't wait for him this time. She departed alone, and the click of her heels on the wood resonated like the last gasp of a legacy crumbling in real time. When court met the following day, the courthouse lobby was crowded with more than reporters. Former friends, estranged family members, even former TLC staff, who once swore the NDA oath of secrecy now stood impatiently in the back pews, hoping to see the day the unthinkable became unavoidable. The courtroom itself was standing room only, not just with onlookers, but with specters, shadows of the dinner table lies, of dreams sold in the confessional, of marriages that unraveled without so much as a ceremony, but with the painless bite of betrayal. Kody Brown arrived last, jaw set, face pale beneath a thinning beard. No Robyn for him, no cameras, just the harshness of what a fallen kingdom looks like when there is no throne left to squabble over. The judge was not slow. "We will start with testimony from Meri Brown," he said. Meri stood up. She wore a plain dress, her presence far from it. For years she had been the quiet one, the first wife, the overlooked cornerstone. But now she strode to the stand like a woman who had taken months to gather the courage to speak. "Not as a victim, but as a survivor name," instructed the clerk. "Meri Caroline Brown. And your connection to the defendant? Ex-wife." There was a flash across Cody's eyes. "Miss Brown," the judge began, "were you aware of the Dalton Trust or its $2 million holdings prior to last week's evidence being entered?" Meri nodded once. "Number I found out when the binder was brought before the court." "Can you confirm," the attorney asked, "that you co-signed on a $212,000 home equity loan in 2016, in good faith believing it would be for a multifamily dwelling?" "Yes, that is what he told me, that it was for Coyote Pass." "Did you ever get to see where the money went?" Meri paused. "Number, but later that year, Robyn started working on a second house in Flagstaff." Cody stretched forward, his expression obviously distressed. But Meri didn't flinch. "And," she went on, "he stopped responding to my texts the day I asked for receipts." That sentence lingered in the air because it wasn't about money. It was about silence as punishment, about how Cody exercised control not with force but with denial. And then after you'd asked the wrong question, you weren't loyal anymore. You were disposable. Did he ever disclose the existence of any trust or LLC that wasn't split equally among all wives? The judge prodded. "No, Your Honor. He would actually explain to us repeatedly that we were all broke, that we had to tighten the belt." She swallowed hard. "I quit asking for a second car. I quit asking for vacations. I even missed my own therapy sessions." Her voice cracked. "But somehow he always managed Robyn's upgrades on money." Christine closed her eyes. Janelle grasped the pew more tightly, for to hear it spoken aloud on tape was worse than to have known it in confidentiality. This was not just a family that was unraveling. It was a systemic financial betrayal achieved under the guise of spiritual order. And the order had been broken now. The judge thanked Meri and requested the next witness, but the room already knew the illusion was shattered, and Kody Brown stood in its remnants. As Meri departed from the witness stand, there was no applause, no wail, only a cold, collective hush that settled over the courtroom like mist. Christine nodded to her quietly, and Janelle brushed her arm fleetingly in solidarity. But the moment was more than a single woman's word. It was about the pattern, the creeping, insidious stitch that sewed Cody's decisions together, and the judge knew it. "Next witness," he said, tone stricter now. Janelle Shriver, Brown Janelle stood. The woman who had once been the family's voice of logic, the budgeter, the quiet backbone behind group finances. Today she looked like something else entirely, determined, wounded, furious. She walked to the stand without looking at Cody. She didn't need to, because when you've seen a man manipulate your loyalty for over 2 decades, there's nothing left to look at. State your name for the record. Janelle Shriver Brown. And your relationship with the defendant, spiritually divorced ex-wife, business partner, former co-trustee on family assets. That was no slip-up. The lawyers leaned in, their eyes fixed on the judge. So did Cody. "Miss Brown," the judge asked, "can you tell me about your role in making financial decisions for the family from 2010 to 2021? "I handled the home budgets, kept track of our joint TLC income, and also organized all our joint utilities and food planning. I helped organize payments on Coyote Pass, also." "Did you ever receive a full disclosure on the Dalton Trust?" "No, Your Honor. But I had suspicions as early as 2019. The court leaned forward. Continue. Janelle tugged open a folder. "That year, Cody stopped letting me access our shared Mint budgeting program. He said it wasn't working. But then I saw a $67,000 withdrawal from our shared business account, Brown Living LLC, which Christine and I had started with Meri." She passed the court a photocopied note. "I traced a paper trail to an organization called KD Developments, which was not a registered family firm." I asked Cody. "He told me it was a short-term holding account for tax planning purposes." I believed him, until Christine produced the binder. Cody shifted uneasily, his foot tapping wildly now. "Did you ever profit personally, as a result of monies withdrawn into the Dalton Trust?" "Number, quite the contrary. I was denied the ability to refinance my house. I took loans from my grown kids to make my mortgage payment when TLC withheld a payment in 2020. The courtroom became silent again, more than money. The reveal of dehumanization hiding in financial dominance. And there was the truth. Cody didn't just pass money under the table. He passed power, and every pass was a vote of no confidence in the women who'd stood by him for decades. "Do you believe that Cody deliberately kept these assets secret?" Janelle gazed straight into his face for the first time. "Yes, I think he used the trust like a golden parachute, and the rest of us like collateral damage." Robyn, sitting silently in the gallery, closed her eyes, for even she could no longer pretend. "Let the record show," the judge said, "that 2 different wives, both money investors, have sworn under oath to patterns of deception, misrepresentation, and asset diversion." And for the first time in the trial, Kody Brown looked scared. The courtroom called for a brief recess, but nobody stood up. The room had shifted in mood, not because of what Janelle had uttered, but because of what it revealed. This was no longer some shameful family squabble. This was a slow drip scam at last beginning to crumble under the weight of its own deceit. And at the center of it all, Coyote Pass, the very same land, which used to be a symbol of hope, unity, a land where all the wives would build their dream homes. Now, it was a symbol of deception, loyalty, and spiritual manipulation. The judge was back, and he wasted no time. This court is prepared to hear new forensic evidence that arrived late last night. It involves the transfer of funds from Brown Family Entertainment into the Dalton Trust via an unregistered intermediary account. The words sent a ripple through the room. Cody sat bolt upright, his face visibly shaken. Christine sat ramrod, straight, already expecting what was about to happen. She had fought for this, quietly, tenaciously, painstakingly. The binder was more than receipts. It was a blueprint, the judge continued. This broker account, called RB Management, is believed to have been established in 2018, shortly following Mr. Brown legally marrying Robyn Brown. The transactions reflect monthly exchanges of between $15,000 and $42,000 over a 3-year span, aggregating more than $2 million. The gallery gasped. Cody's lawyer objected, of course. Speculation, relevance. But the judge overruled him. It is relevant. You told this court that your client did not know the Dalton Trust balance, but these deposits show hands-on involvement, including a deposit labeled, quote, Aurora College Tuition, secured. That name, Aurora, struck like lightning, a name Robyn held sacred, a name which now tied her to the fraud, and Christine took her chance. Your Honor, she said, I have a copy of the beneficiary plan of the trust, submitted to the whistleblower. I believe it should be in the record. The courtroom strained. A whistleblower, yes, Christine confirmed. A former producer for TLC who did paperwork when Cody demanded Robyn be paid in a separate check in season 15. They photocopied the trust binder in fear of liability. We got it anonymously, Burbank postmarked. The judge flipped through the pages, pausing on the chart of distribution. This states the Dalton Trust has Robyn Brown as primary beneficiary, Kody Brown as controlling trustee, and nothing of any other wives or children. The gavel came down hard. We are out of family fight territory. We are venturing into the realm of legal misrepresentation, marriage fraud, and potential tax evasion. It was the clap heard across the sister wives' kingdom, not on television, not in the papers, but here on the stand in the spotlight and in the glare of paper trails that could not conceal. And yet, Cody stayed mum. Because the more that coursed through their investigation, the more they uncovered that corroborated what his wives long suspected. Trust was never set up for protecting the family. It was about standing up for himself. The lights in the courtroom felt more hospitable now. Not because the mood had changed, but because the truth had, and it was bubbling. Christine retreated to her seat as the clerk entered the trust documents into evidence. The judge leaned forward, fingers interlaced, eyes on Cody Brown. Mr. Brown, he said with measured deliberation, the court will now need you to testify. A whisper coursed through the gallery. Cody, who had evaded deposition. Cody, who had testified through attorneys. Cody, who once controlled every single story, now stood before a judge's bench being asked to testify under oath, on the record with the world watching. He stood uncertainly. Gone was the bombast and arrogance. In their place, a man ensnared by his own desires stood. He adjusted his jacket, swallowed hard, and walked to the podium as if to the gallows. The bailiff swore him in, and the judge did not delay. Mr. Brown, were you the sole party in control of the Dalton Trust during its entire lifetime? I thought it was a safety net for the family, Cody began, voice raspy. It wasn't to exclude anyone. Answer the question, the judge snapped. Yes, he growled. Did you ever share its existence with Christine, Janelle, or Meri? No, the courtroom air cracked like lightning. Even Robyn flinched. Why not? The judge asked, tightening the net. Cody hesitated. Because they weren't. They weren't emotionally stable with money. They would have freaked. Christine laughed once, a fleeting, stunned noise. Panicked. She panted to Janelle. You mean we'd have questioned things, the judge continued. Mr. Brown, did you know that $180,000 was withdrawn from that trust 2 months after Christine began divorce proceedings to purchase a 2022 Ford Raptor belonging to Robyn Brown? Cody's mouth opened, then closed. No answer. And do you know, growled the judge, his voice rising with indignation, that your name appears on the firm account that distributed profits from Sister Wives Season 20 directly into the trust, outside of going through all other named cast members? I did not steal from them. Cody suddenly snapped. I built that family. I protected them. If I saved money, it was because they could not handle the truth. And there it was, the surprise admission, not of strategy, but of mindset. Cody did not think he was doing something wrong. He thought he was superior, more intelligent, worthy. The judge leaned back. Let the record reflect that the defendant just admitted under oath that he withheld information for calculated control of joint family money. Cody's attorney buried his face in his hands. But that wasn't all. The prosecution had one more surprise witness. one whose name had only just been referred to as Anonymous 14, until today a veiled identity to maintain the source's silence. Undefined. The courtroom doors creaked open once more, and out came Aurora, Robyn's daughter, Cody's legal stepchild. The one mentioned in the trust documents, the one whose name had been called upon to keep funds safe, the one who was never intended to take the stand. And as she walked towards the stand, Christine leaned into Janelle and whispered, This is where it all ends." Aurora stood in the hallway outside the courtroom like a ghost torn from Cody and Robyn's tightly controlled fantasy world, a young woman no longer sheltered by the scripted television reality of her parents. She was no longer the weeping child fans had seen in the past in therapy segments. This Aurora was not the same, poised as one piece, and carrying something heavier than anyone could have imagined: her own truth. The oath was read by the bailiff, and the gallery fell silent as if pierced by a shiver. Cody's face was white. Robyn, for the first time during trial, silently mouthed the word number. The prosecutor proceeded cautiously. "Please, go ahead and give your full name for the record." "Aurora Brown Sullivan." The courtroom froze. Not Aurora Brown. Not Aurora Jessup, but Sullivan, the name she'd legally adopted 2 weeks prior. A silent rebuff of Cody, an assertion of autonomy. "Miss Sullivan," the attorney continued, "do you have any conception of why?" The judge flipped through the pages, pausing on the chart of distribution. "This states the Dalton Trust has Robyn Brown as primary beneficiary, Cody Brown as controlling trustee, and nothing of any other wives or children." The gavel came down hard. "We are out of family fight territory. We are venturing into the realm of legal misrepresentation, marriage fraud, and potential tax evasion." It was the clap heard across the sister wives' kingdom, not on television, not in the papers, but here, on the stand, in the spotlight, and in the glare of paper trails that could not conceal. And yet Cody stayed mum. Because the more that coursed through their investigation, the more they uncovered that corroborated what his wives long suspected: trust was never set up for protecting the family. It was about standing up for himself. The lights in the courtroom felt more hospitable now. Not because the mood had changed, but because the truth had, and it was bubbling. Christine retreated to her seat as the clerk entered the trust documents into evidence. The judge leaned forward, fingers interlaced, eyes on Cody Brown. "Mr. Brown," he said with measured deliberation, "the court will now need you to testify." A whisper coursed through the gallery. Cody, who had evaded deposition, Cody, who had testified through attorneys, Cody, who once controlled every single story, now stood before a judge's bench being asked to testify under oath on the record, with the world watching. He stood uncertainly. Gone was the bombast and arrogance. In their place, a man ensnared by his own desires stood. He adjusted his jacket, swallowed hard, and walked to the podium as if to the gallows. The bailiff swore him in, and the judge did not delay. "Mr. Brown, were you the sole party in control of the Dalton Trust during its entire lifetime?" "I thought it was a safety net for the family," Cody began, voice raspy. "It wasn't to exclude anyone." "Answer the question," the judge snapped. "Yes," he growled. "Did you ever share its existence with Christine, Janelle, or Meri?" No, the courtroom air cracked like lightning. Even Robyn flinched. "Why not?" the judge asked, tightening the net. Cody hesitated. "Because they weren't emotionally stable with money. They would have freaked." Christine laughed once, a fleeting, stunned noise. "Panicked?" She panted to Janelle. "You mean we'd have questioned things?" The judge continued. "Mr. Brown, did you know that $180,000 was withdrawn from that trust 2 months after Christine began divorce proceedings to purchase a 2022 Ford Raptor belonging to Robyn Brown?" Cody's mouth opened, then closed. No answer. "And do you know," growled the judge, his voice rising with indignation, "that your name appears on the firm account that distributed profits from Sister Wives Season 20 directly into the trust, outside of going through all other named cast members?" "I did not steal from them," Cody suddenly snapped. "I built that family. I protected them. If I saved money, it was because they could not handle the truth." And there it was, the surprise admission. Not of strategy, but of mindset. Cody did not think he was doing something wrong. He thought he was superior, more intelligent, worthy. The judge leaned back, let the record reflect that the defendant just admitted, under oath, that he withheld information for calculated control of joint family money. Cody's attorney buried his face in his hands, but that wasn't all. The prosecution had one more surprise witness, one whose name had only just been referred to as Anonymous 14. Until today, a veiled identity to maintain the source's silence. Undefined, the courtroom doors creaked open once more, and out came Aurora, Robyn's daughter, Cody's legal stepchild, the one mentioned in the trust documents, the one whose name had been called upon to keep funds safe, the one who was never intended to take the stand. And as she walked towards the stand, Christine leaned into Janelle and whispered, This is where it all ends." Aurora stood in the hallway outside the courtroom like a ghost torn from Cody and Robyn's tightly controlled fantasy world, a young woman no longer sheltered by the scripted television reality of her parents. She was no longer the weeping child fans had seen in the past in therapy segments. This Aurora was not the same, poised as one piece, and carrying something heavier than anyone could have imagined. Her own truth. The oath was read by the bailiff, and the gallery fell silent as if pierced by a shiver. Cody's face was white. Robyn, for the first time during trial, silently mouthed the word number. The prosecutor proceeded cautiously. "Please go ahead and give your full name for the record." Aurora Brown Sullivan. The courtroom froze. Not Aurora Brown. Not Aurora Jessup, but Sullivan, the name she'd legally adopted 2 weeks prior. A silent rebuff of Cody, an assertion of autonomy. "Miss Sullivan," the attorney continued, "do you have any conception of why you've been called to testify today?" "Yes, my name was used to justify transactions which Kody Brown and my mother, Robyn Brown, had conducted in my absence without my consent." A collective sigh was maintained. "Go on." Aurora opened a folder. "This is a bank statement of a $210,000 transfer entitled Aurora Sullivan Education Fund from the Dalton Trust in 2021. I never even saw that cash. My college tuition was paid for by federal grants and a family scholarship on my biological father's side. When I asked my mother, she assured me I shouldn't worry, that the trust was just in my name for security." "And did you sign your name to place your name on this trust?" Number. The bomb detonated quietly, not in decibel but in effect. For the first time, it wasn't one of Cody's wives who was standing up against him. It was a child he had promised to protect, and to compound the insult, she wasn't hysterical. She was competent, ferocious, composed. The sort of witness you can't impeach without becoming a monster. "Did you know who was managing the trust?" "Yes, all the documents were signed by Cody Brown. I saw him do it in my kitchen. I was 16. Was Robyn Brown aware of the structure of the trust?" Aurora hesitated, then said, "She helped name it. Dalton was the street where we lived on in Flagstaff when they first put it in place." Gasps. The judge cut him off. "Let the record reflect that this witness has now implicated Robyn Brown and Cody Brown for knowingly placing a minor's name on a fraudulent trust to hide marital property." Cody sprang to his feet. "That is not what transpired." "She does not. Sit down, Mr. Brown." The judge thundered, but the court had already come to a boil. Robyn was crying. Cody was shouting. Christine put her hands over her head. Janelle whispered, "My God." And Meri simply stared at Aurora as if she'd never seen her at all. Because this was no longer about cash. It was about legacy. What Cody and Robyn were willing to do in order to stay in control. Even if that was escorting their daughter out into a human smokescreen. And now, that smoke was dissipating. As Aurora walked out of the witness stand, the weight of her words hovered in the courtroom like a creeping, strangling fog. What she had accomplished was not only courageous, it was historic. She had obliterated the myth that Cody and Robyn had labored so strenuously to build, brick by duplicitous brick, over a decade of television manipulation. The court no longer saw Cody as a misled patriarch. They saw him as a man who had exploited the fame and trust of his family to build a hidden empire in the shadows. The judge declared a recess of 10 minutes, but no one moved. No cameras were allowed, but the moment seared itself into every witness's mind like a branding iron. This was the day the house of cards collapsed. When the judge came back, his robe felt heavier, his voice firmer. having heard the evidence testified to by Aurora Sullivan and corroborated evidence produced. He started off. This court finds reason to proceed with official charges of civil fraud, marital deceit, and potential perjury subject to further consideration. Robyn sobbed hysterically, mumbling frantically to her lawyer. Cody, however, stayed completely stock still, no winking, no words. This was the face of a man watching everything that he had let go. Christine stood once more, binder in hand, and strode toward the stand with subdued confidence. "Your Honor," she began, "I request that the court freeze all assets of the Dalton Trust and Coyote Pass immediately, pending monetary compensation to all members of the Brown family who were excluded." The judge nodded. Motion noted and under consideration. And finally, the coup de guerre face, a compilation of 2021 surveillance footage generated by whistleblower TLC producer. The video showed Cody and Robyn in a Flagstaff real estate company, signing over transfer deeds to Coyote Pass, marking off lots not in wives' or kids' names, but under RB Management LLC. Not only was it hidden, it was stolen in plain view. The judge nodded once. One final question. "Mr. Brown, what do you have to say for yourself?" Slowly, Cody stood up. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to strike back. "You all turned on me," he spat. "Christine, Janelle, even Meri. You wanted the kingdom, but you didn't want the king, so I guarded what I could. You say it is fraud. I say it is survival." Gasps echo. Christine blinked in horror. Meri shook her head. Janelle just turned away. The judge slammed the gavel. "This court will reconvene tomorrow morning for final judgment," and that was it for now. The truth was out. The empire was opened up. But behind closed doors, a war had already begun. Who would control what came next? The money, the land, the story. Christine turned to Janelle. "No matter how tomorrow ends," she whispered, "we've already won," because for the first time, the story was theirs again. The final day of judgment began not with fanfare, but with silence, the kind that echoes through marble halls and crawls beneath the skin like a warning. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every corner. Legal analysts whispered predictions. Former viewers of Sister Wives joined critics and strangers, waiting for the downfall of an empire they once watched out of comfort and curiosity. And what they got in return was justice. The bailiff called the judge. Everyone rose. And Kody Brown, former unchallenged monarch of a huge polygamous empire, rose not as a monarch but as a defendant. "All rise," the clerk announced. The judge's gavel clanged out in the room. "We are here today to deliver judgment in the case of Christine Allred Brown, Janelle Shriver Brown, and Meri Barber Brown v. Cody Wynn Brown and Robyn Alice Brown. The charges are financial fraud, breach of marital trust, concealment of assets, and exploitation of family funds related to the Dalton Trust and the Coyote Pass property." Cody cringed with every syllable. The judge continued, "Having heard testimony from Aurora Sullivan, Christine Brown, and financial expert witnesses, and having authenticated documents linking fraudulent transfers to RB Management LLC, this court holds as follows." The room gasped. "Own, the $2 million in the Dalton Trust is to be repaid in full into a joint account of the plaintiffs. 2. All that is part of the Coyote Pass property, subdivided land, assets controlled by LLCs, and production rights shared, shall be placed in abeyance until an equitable appraiser allocates even distribution between all concerned. 3. The defendants are commanded to furnish all other financial documents in their possession subject to contempt. Any further recalcitrance will be attended to with fines and potential imprisonment." The courtroom erupted. Christine gasped, holding Janelle's hand. Meri cried silently, her lips trembling with relief. Cody's jaw clenched so tightly it seemed to stiffen and break. Robyn wept, whispering, "He told me it was okay. He said no one would ever find out. They did find out. Now the world knew." The judge looked directly at Cody. "There is a pattern of control and manipulation here, of economic exploitation, that took away from your wives, both legally and morally, their place in a decades-long partnership. You have used your role as head of the household not to shield them, but to enrich yourselves. That ends today." Christine stood, slowly, deliberately, and held the same binder that began it all. "You assured us we were safe," she told him, so that everyone in the courtroom could hear. but safety to you meant silence. No more. Cody did not answer. He could not. His empire, built on charisma, secrecy, and television domination, had erected one receipt, one transfer, one witness at a time. As the courtroom emptied, a reporter shouted out to Christine, "What is next for the Brown family?" She turned around, a fire in her eyes. "We rebuild without lies." And with that, a new chapter began. Not under Cody's shadow, not under Robyn's manipulation, but in the light of truth, paper trails, and the strength of 3 women who didn't remain silent. The judge's gavel hadn't merely ruled out fraud. It had concluded a tradition of terror, and in its place, something glorious. Justice. At last, long delayed, and unstoppable weeks passed, but the dust of the courtroom never really settled. Kody Brown had vanished from view, into silence, his one-time bulletproof image broken beyond understanding. The man who built a reality television dynasty on patriarchal control and glossed over anarchy was now a cautionary tale, not just for polygamous families, but for anyone who wields love, trust, and legality as weapons of personal gain. TLC issued a well-choreographed statement. "We stand with the families involved and have suspended all filming involving the Brown family until further notice." In backrooms, producers struggled to reframe the narrative, but the truth had already shown up, not in scripted confessions, but in sworn affidavits and fiscal records that could not be edited. Christine, Janelle, and Meri emerged not as stars of the reality television show, but as survivors. Their names were no longer famous in their association with Cody's story. They had become authors themselves. Christine penned a memoir within months titled The Binder and the Betrayal. It sold out on pre-orders. Janelle took charge of what remained of Coyote Pass land after the third-party audit, instituting a women's cooperative retreat that would heal generational trauma with land ownership and self-sufficiency. Meri set up a center for legal assistance for women in polygamous communities, helping others achieve liberty from the dominance that once had her in bondage. And Robyn, she filed for legal separation from Cody in just 2 weeks of the ruling. Court documents leaked online showed she claimed that she had been emotionally and financially manipulated by a man who said it was all in the name of love. But the rest of the world wasn't so kind. Public opinion branded her not only an accomplice, but a mastermind behind the fraud. As for Aurora, her life was radically changed. She relocated to another state, began school using her own name, and stepped out of the limelight. But her testimony would endure, not as it was sensationalized in the tabloids, but as the moment a daughter stood taller than the man who had raised her. And then came the ultimate twist. The judge, the very same one who raised the alarm about the $2 million clandestine fund, signed an order to put the case on public record. All of it. All the deceptions, all the dollars. The truth was no longer concealed behind paperwork and LLCs. It was free, and freedom, it appears, was the one thing Kody Brown couldn't handle. The Brown family's love story did not end there. It ended in court, accounting, and finally, forgiveness. Because when you try to bury $2 million under a shroud of secrecy, someone always uncovers the spade.